this is Aaron at PowerPopaholic.com. I am with today musician Richard Turgeon, who has a new album that's been out for a few months. How are you doing today, Richard?
Very good, Aaron. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And the new album is called Life of the Party. Tell me a little bit about the genesis of this album because you had a series of albums prior that seemed to be, focused on, life in the West Coast, and now you move to this Life of the Party. Tell me how this album got started.
I've been putting out records, as you know, for the last 6 or 7 years, as a solo artist under my own name. And it kind of follows this period in time where, I finally moved out of the city. I've been living in the city my whole life since college.
Right.
So we're in Marin County, and there's just a lot to be inspired by in terms of nature and the California lifestyle. I like to hike a lot. I get up to Northern California a lot. And so that kind of informed, I think, these running themes, I guess, for the first few albums. And I don't think that's run its course by any means. I mean, that still influences like songs on this record. I just wanted to try something um, new in terms of like a title and even the artwork. I had never used like illustration kind of treatment for the cover. And I usually don't decide on an album title until like I'm near finished with putting the collection together. And then it's
Got
kind of
it.
like, what title sounds good for that and for like where I am in life. And so Life of the Party is just this kind of like, I think cynical, uh, affectionate take on sort of like me as a person, where it's like I'm not a shy introvert person, but I'm definitely on that side of the spectrum. I'm a solo artist. I work well with others, but at the same time, like I have a unique vision. So there's a part of me that needs alone time to create, to write,
Sure.
make music, all that stuff. And so I think it's just kind of like a little in joke with myself, where it's like there's this loner crow on the cover, and he's with other people, but he needs to be alone, and the life of the party.
I
A bit of
got
a
it.
sardonic statement. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think you came on my radar when I first heard the song from one of your early albums, Bigfoot's an Alien. It just blew me away. It was a great song. And I've been following
Thank
you
you.
ever since. And the great thing about Life of the Party, as opposed to some of the other previous albums you had, I think this one is without a doubt your best. The first half, the first five songs in this album are all killer. They're all great. It's almost like the theme seems to be almost like a slow motion breakup, of a
Mhm.
relationship. And then there's the cynicism that hits in with Our Fair City and look at how crappy everything is and all that stuff. And then it sort of changes the tone a little bit towards the middle part of the album. Uh, Let me start at the very beginning. Let me even go back before this album. How did you get your start doing solo work? What kind of bands were you in prior? And how do you think that experience of moving to California changed you in any way?
Well, that's a great set of questions. I'll try to hit it in broad strokes.
Sure.
I mean, I was in my first rock band when I was 13 with Richie Kotzen, who went on to much greater fame and fortune as the lead guitarist of like Poison. He's worked with Ozzy and all the greats or whatever. But I've been doing this for a while. I wasn't as into music as a performer or whatever, or as a musician, when in my early teens. I was a huge fan, and I
Mhm.
was in a rock band, and then I really got into the movies and film, and I went to film school. And so it really wasn't until college when I started to like have my own space, so I could get a drum kit for the first time, and
Right.
I picked up guitar when I was 22, believe it or not. But I really was a drummer. I always wanted to be a drummer. Even in that band when I was 13,
Right.
I was asked to sing rather than play drums. So it's really cumulative. How I made a very conscious decision when I was 23, like I'm gonna make a go of this, because Nirvana and Green Day, bands like that really inspired me. If bands that I like that much can hit the mainstream,
Hmm.
then maybe my sort of punk pop sensibilities, indie rock sensibilities have a shot. So I started my first band called The Movies in Pittsburgh. I played all the clubs out there, every club in Pittsburgh, and opened for a few really good acts, like all the good local acts. And then I moved my band. I left that band because I wanted to do, more sort of like indie rock sounding type of stuff. I was evolving as a songwriter. I had done what I wanted to do in Pittsburgh, and so I moved to Philly. I started a trio called The Movies because a lot of my songs are storytelling, and I went to film school, etc. I tend to think cinematically for some songs.
Sure.
Um, that went really well. I love that band. We were an awesome band. I would call, like, Blink was out there, Green Day was out there, but they weren't like supernova yet. And so we
Right.
were kind of like in that alt rock 90s mix. We played CBGBs. We played all the clubs in Philly, opened for some really good acts there as well. And then when I moved to California, I formed a four-piece called Johnstown, which was, again, just like a rock band centered on my material. And we were out there for like a year. I was drumming in a couple of other bands around town in San Francisco, like the Tender
Right.
View, the
Right.
Family Arsenal. But then I started, the solo thing. I think, like, I also put out a book called Indie Rock 101, which was about producing and promoting your band. And so this whole time I've been producing records, especially like with when digital came along. So over time, it was like sharpening my skills in songwriting, drums, guitars, production, and it just kind of came. It all kind of came together where I was like, I could finally do what I wanted to do. If I couldn't play drums or something, I wouldn't be egotistical and play crappy drums on my records. It was just
Right.
like I was at a point where financially, artistically, creatively, I just had a ton to say. So after Bigfoot, I released that single. It just opened a floodgate of sorts, and I got on this rhythm of like, I'm going into the studio every Saturday night and just I would do like a song a month, and that's how I've been able to put out so many records, up until this point. So hopefully that answers your
Yeah.
question, which was
No,
kind of like
that's
what
great.
got me to this point. Yeah.
Excellent. So, tell me a little bit. So let's move ahead a little bit to this album, "Life of the Party," your latest album, and tell me a little bit about. Like I said, the first five songs are just terrific. Here, they keep you compelled. The riffs are great. The melodies are really good, and it's well written as well. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the story behind this. And was this inspired by a breakup that you had, or a divorce, or something like that, or?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you because I know how much good music you listen to and review, from people that are out there. So I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Um, I don't think that the album was inspired by like a particular event that is momentous as like a big, I'm looking at my song list here, but like as a big breakup or divorce or something. It's like really, each song I'm looking at like All Alone. It's like that's a feeling of just like give me some space,
Right.
from somebody that you're with or somebody that you're close to. You've moved on was based on a very specific memory or relationship, but I try to broaden the lyrics so that it's universal and like anybody
Right.
can relate to just like, hey, this girl dumped me, she's moved on, it sucks. I tried to get in touch with her and she ghosted me. And this particular incident I'm thinking about was before the internet, that it was you don't let go of things like that. You
Yeah.
tend to not,
No.
obviously I don't hold on to that person, but it's like as a songwriter, I'm going into my memory banks of like, geez, the music sounds like this. How can I write lyrics around that? Oh, that memory, I'm gonna use that emotional fuel, right? And then, I've Got You Now is about, this cynical, dark take on you meet your high school sweetheart, you get married, and maybe it's a mistake, and it just turns into a really dark relationship. Now, fortunately, that's not autobiographical. It's kind of like, some things I've been through in life, but then again, it's just like the storyteller. Friend Zone,
Yeah,
again, it's
yeah. I
based
really
on,
identified with
oh,
Friend Zone. I kind of lived that song a little bit in college, so I
I
I
don't
know where
care
you're
how
coming
rich
from
or good
there.
looking you are. Yeah, I don't care how rich or good looking you are. I think like if you're a guy, you're like gonna be in the friend zone with somebody in life. And for me, I'm thinking of somebody like way, way, way back. So again, it's kind of like you know that some of that happened, but again, I try to make it so like a listener like you is like, yep, I've been there, brother. You know.
No, that
And
yeah,
then
that's what I
our
really admire about the album, the fact that it you do identify with things, and I also like the fact that you know, and this is also on past albums where you've put, you know, I won't say political, but more of a spin of your values in the music, like Our Fair City, you know, talking about, you know, the homeless are fine as long as you don't look at them, you know, and but in earlier albums, especially, you know, Rough Around the Edges and Campfire Songs, you know, you talk about your camping experiences and nature in those albums. And you know, I think a lot of it, like I said, it comes across well. It's identifiable. And you know, another thing that I was gonna ask, because you do have a consistency to your sound, very consistent over the course of several albums. Um, is there any thoughts to what do you get your inspiration to try something new? I mean, do you listen to current artists, other artists that I've listened to and reviewed? Do you you know, go to live shows? Who do you like basically nowadays, as opposed to your, you know, original influences, you know, like Green Day that you had mentioned?
That's a great question. That's a very good question. I think like I was brought up on this diet of like 80s hair metal or sort of like pop metal, you know,
Right.
like I like Motley Crue and Asia. They're not pop metal, but like Quiet Riot, stuff like Night Ranger. And
Yep.
then it's pop, right? It's like pop
Right.
and rock, like power pop. And then I think it gets into like all the bands in the 90s like Nirvana that I loved and Green Day and stuff, like they grew up listening to that stuff, like even you know but they blew it all up, right? Like Nirvana basically was like, see you later, Guns N' Roses and Poison, we're here. It's still melodic rock.
Right.
um in terms of I'm never gonna not like that stuff. Like I would say like the Police and Weezer, Green Day, Blink 182, like these are some of my favorite bands. I don't necessarily put out records that sound like that, I don't think,
No,
but
no, you don't. I'm just saying that
they're
the
part of
influence is
that.
there. The influence is there, and it's
Yeah,
you know, and that's what attracts most of us to your music as well. I'm just asking, as far as
thank you.
contemporary like music now, is there anybody you listen
Mhm.
to or like?
Yeah, and I was getting to that where I think the move to the West Coast and just getting older, like I grew up with my dad listening to the Eagles, but like I got obsessed with them a couple of years ago. Like I'm one of those people like I almost discover old bands or really great bands and get into that rather than like you know, I'm gonna like look at the blogs and see who's cool now. And of course I'm listening to some newer stuff, but at the same time, like I started liking Fleetwood Mac. I mean, who knew? I thought they were boring, you know, like when I was like all about Nirvana
Right.
forever, you know, and like the Police and like really hard driving. I'm a drummer, so it's like just the Foo Fighters, anything with like a good hard rock beat. But like this stuff starts creeping in there, and it's like really a big part of the California sound, right? So I start listening to the Birds and like getting more into Tom Petty, who I've always liked, but like
Mhm.
I think just more sort of organic, softer type stuff, and you can probably hear that in my records since like in between the spaces, but especially probably like the last two or three. There's I call it like California rock, but there's like a certain gentleness to it, I guess. But okay, so that's old stuff like the Eagles, right? Like I got really into them these last few years. The Beach Boys, I got just obsessed with. You know, I optioned a screenplay about Dennis Wilson called Holy Man about a year and a half ago,
Wow.
and that's all I listened to, and I'm one of those people like I'm almost like autistic OCD listener where it's kind of like I need to break it all down. I need to like listen to it over and over again. I mean, my
I've been
parents
that
got
way
sick of
with
listening
my
to like
Beach Boys, that's for sure. So I can identify
right.
with that absolutely. When
Yeah.
it came to that kind of music obsession, I got
Hmm.
into the Beach Boys. You know, all the Bees. You know that Power Pop fans
Yeah.
love Beatles, Beach Boys,
That's right.
Birds. You know, and
Yeah.
beyond. You know, and I think it's you know it's something that definitely informs you and other bands that I didn't really listen to in high school or in college, I
Hmm.
found out later on, you know, like I was never a big Frank Zappa fan until my 30s. So once I
Yeah.
got
Tastes
there, I
change.
started listening to everything Zappa did, and I said first I listened to it and I hated it, and then I listened to it a couple more times, and I listened to certain songs and things, and then I started to get him, and I understood, and then
Yeah.
I said, oh wow, now I got to listen to more, and just like some artists are, they're the volume of work is just huge. It takes you forever, kind of
Yeah.
like Guided by Voices. You could spend your life listening to everything Robert Pollard ever came out with. So
It's true.
it's a
It's
great
true.
rabbit hole as well. But I'm getting a little off track here. Back after you completed this album, I read something. I don't know if it was in your liner notes or something to the fact that you were going to take a little break or you were going to relax up a little bit. Um,
Haha.
is that really happening, or are you still working?
I can't stop working. I'm a creative person. It's very hard for me to shut that. I can't shut that off. And so when I say that, it's really about like I've been going like a song a month full speed for a long time. And
Yeah,
it's not stop. Like I said, I can't shut it off. So it's like I'm working on a new song now, just in terms of like working out the chords. And I don't even have lyrics for it. Another one I have drums done for it, and rhythm guitar. So it's like I'm not gonna stop. It's more just like I just need to like life is exhaling and inhaling, and I need to just kind of like, okay, dude, chill out. You don't need to put out another 10, 11 song record by August because my goal has always been like, build a record over the year, one song a month, and then it's like it becomes a record. And I'm just giving myself the space to like slow down a little bit
sure.
and not it doesn't mean like I'm retiring or it's the retirement tour or I'm quitting or anything dramatic like that. It literally is just kind of like I have to just focus a little bit and go scuba diving for a day and do these things that like music is like my priority or my family and writing and stuff like that, writing screenplays, but like I need to like get a little life in there. And so I'm just giving myself permission to like just let it come organically. It's not going to shut itself off like the muse or whatever. And so it's really just about pacing myself. If I get like six really solid songs done by the end of the year, it will probably be more, but like I'm okay with that this year. So
All
that's
right,
that's what
cool.
that means.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So, also, do you do producing as well, with other bands and other
Yeah.
artists? Is there anybody
I
that
I
you produce that we should pay attention to?
You know, I feel like I'll see more of that as I get older, like in my future, because I like to produce my own music. Like I love the studio as an instrument and like just Logic. I work in Logic and just like the recording process, like I really, really love it. And I've worked very hard to get good at it. I mean, I'm not even saying like I'm the best or I mean, there's plenty of people out there who are professional and do this like day in and day out with like giant compressors behind them and racks of stuff. Like I have a very simple, low budget setup that is light and efficient for like how I work and what I do. In terms of producing others, I would definitely be interested in that if I weren't writing so much of my own stuff. So I
Got
feel
it.
like what's going to happen is eventually in life, whether I have more time, because like, my day job life or family life gets a little lighter, then it's like, I'm gonna look for a side project where I get to produce this or that band, especially with me as a drummer, because I love to play drums and I used to enjoy that kind of role here and there where I'd like drum with another band and then I'd record our stuff. So The answer to the question is like not, I'm not doing that now. Because I'm busy producing my own records, but like at some point I can see that happening.
All right, cool. Very great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Richard Turgeon, for talking to me and talking about the album. The album out is called Life of the Party, and it's great. It's one of his best albums here. Came out a couple months ago, and it's still something that I listen to once in a while on my playlist. So thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate it. It's been great to meet you. Talk
All
to
right,
you.
great. Nice meeting you too, and take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye.